Hi everyone, my name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology. This is Gary Gomes, Vedic Astrology News. And we'll talk about the coming week and a little bit about, uh, just I resettle myself, a little bit about the coming year. And I was, before I go on to my explanation, I was going to tell you that if you want to reach me for readings or for lessons, please call or text 508-525-0001 or email me at garygomesg@gmail.com. So that's garygomesg@gmail.com. Okay, so my name, the letter G at gmail.com. And I was actually struggling this morning to find seeing the Saturn transit into Pisces, and there are auspicious lunar placements for the start of a Saturn transit, and there are inauspicious lunar placements for the beginning of a Saturn transit. However, I could not find those rules, so I will try to give those to you next week. I don't know where I put them. They're probably in my notes somewhere. Uh, they're definitely not online. And so I actually went to one of James Braha's videos to see if I could find one of those because James had mentioned it quite a few years ago, but um, crickets. So I'm going to do something. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find something. You can be patient with me. I do have it written down somewhere. And looking up the James Braha video, I actually went to his last book and found a point which I still disagree with him about. So it's about the Potters in Gemini astrology. Um, so it's not. I'm not saying he's wrong and I'm right. It's just that I've had a good experiences with those. He has not. So that's life, I guess. So let me just this won't take long, and it'll be worth it because I'll give you should have done this earlier. So all right. So one of the reasons I want to look this up is because essentially I want to talk about the Sade Sati, and essentially the Sade Sati took place when the moon was in the same sign as Saturn. Uh, so let me just, give me a second, and that's significant. All right, so I think what I'm going to go with is essentially that's basically a good placement. You're very much aware of the limitations that Saturn places on you. It's really not considered an evil or malefic placement. It does tend to emphasize one of the things to keep in mind with, so it's not even Sade Sati, it's essentially Saturn's transit to Pisces. So if we have a map of when that occurred, this is an approximation, obviously, um, because let me just see if we can pull this up. So share and there again. All right, so um, this was March 29th. Saturn was at roughly 2 degrees, so let's go with the afternoon. Well, less than 2 degrees, excuse me, 2 minutes. So let's go around. This is around 10 o'clock at night. So let's go around. Yeah, let's go to 4 p.m. Okay. All right. So time. So let's go. All right. So we can roughly say the Saturn transit into Pisces started around 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on March 29th, Saturday. This will also be used as a proxy map for year-long predictions, which I'll get into in a few minutes. And I'll cover year-long predictions really over the next couple of weeks, as well as the upcoming week. So, so basically, what we have is a Cancer rising. Moon is in the ninth house, which is not a bad placement. Actually, for this rising sign, it's not a bad placement at all. Um, if we're Scorpio and here we're in the moon were in the ninth house, that wouldn't be considered favorable. But since the moon is in the ninth house with Saturn, Mercury, Venus, so it does indicate just reading the chart from a gross interpretational standard, just reading it as a, a birth chart of the Sade Sati, it should bring fame to people. It should bring some outstanding recognition to people, especially cancers. It will give them burdens or worries because Rahu and Saturn are together in this sign. But it will also give them extraordinarily good luck because Venus is also in this sign. Venus rules the 11th house of gains and the fourth house of status. It will also give them travel opportunities. So you see Mercury's retrograde, it will give us a chance to finish things that have been left dormant. Now, Saturn in this particular sign, so Saturn was actually favorably placed in Capricorn and Aquarius because it was in its own sign. So this Saturn transit should actually be favorable to Taurus rising or Taurus sun, to a certain extent Cancer, although it will cause that particular sign to travel a lot, and will also give relationship problems to that particular sign, and it will also give enhanced work responsibilities because everything is bundled over here. Now, it's been my experience that when you have a whole series, and this is not only my experience, there's a text called the Gargahora, which goes through planetary combinations in certain houses. So we have one, two, three, four, five planets in a house. And so Rahu and Ketu are counted six, seven, six, seven. So we have seven of the seven planets located in three houses. So that's actually considered not to be that bad a combination. The more planets cluster together, the more inauspicious they are, the more difficult they are. So again, we had, just going back, we had um, COVID epidemic and the economic recession in 2020 happened when we had a whole series of malefic planets placed in Sagittarius. We had, I believe it was in 2000, we had a whole series of planets placed in Taurus, and that was the dot-com crash. And we had 1962, we had a really difficult transit of in Capricorn. That led to all kinds of problems, including the assassination of President Kennedy. Okay. This combination, to me, doesn't look as difficult as those combinations do. Although, again, one of the things I have said before, I am expecting a kind of a financial panic or a kind of a mini revolutionary period happening roughly between now and the end of June. And that's mainly caused by the Rahu Saturn transit, which I trace back to 1968. And I think that particular pattern will not go away. Um, the other thing you have, at least in this chart, is you have a Saturn Moon conjunction, which is actually, believe it or not, good for fame. It brings hard work, but it's good for fame. Saturn Rahu does indicate change or shifts in alignments or policies, often surprises. Okay. Uh, Pisces is one of the signs which is connected with spiritual development. We should see a large, what I would call spiritual revival around the world. I'm not sure how I feel about that, to be honest with you. I have nothing against spirituality, but I do have something against, I, I am concerned about uh, cultish behavior developing. And actually, even politically, I've seen cultish behavior develop on both sides of the political fence. So essentially, nobody's listening to the points the other side is making. Um, I think also because of the Sun Rahu Saturn combination, this will blunt to a certain extent, at least for a couple of months, some of almost any administration's movement towards reforms. And the main reason I'm saying that is because Sun doesn't like Saturn. Sun will move out of the sign into Aries within about 2 weeks. That will take the brakes off in a really aggressive way, if I'm quite honest with you. And the next 3 months, you're going to see a lot of changes in the United States. I don't think they're going to be evil. I don't think they're going to be repressive. That's something that, but there are a lot of countries around the world that are heading towards civilian demonstrations at the very least, riots at the outside. Uh, I can think of several without really um, thinking too hard, without really stretching my brain too much. England, France, Germany, Romania, Turkey, even China, are all kind of ripe for these kinds of uh, massive protests that we saw hints of. Uh, and we're actually seeing happening in the United States right now with the demonstrations against Doge and also the torching of private property. I think it's only a matter of time before somebody gets seriously hurt. I hope that doesn't happen, but Mars enters Cancer within about a week. And I would watch out for your personal safety, at least during that period. Um, the saving grace in this chart, and also in the Saturn transit of Pisces, is it happens when Venus and Jupiter are exchanging signs. So that will act, so the two benefic planets are engaged in a parivartana yoga. So that's considered to be a good condition for these planets. If we go over to the Navamsha chart, we see Venus and Mercury in the first house, so communications will be strong, but we will still see what I would call lying and political manipulation. And the reason I'm seeing it is coming from the left is because Saturn is involved. Saturn is more connected with the Democratic Party, let's say, than the Republicans are, than with the Republican Party. It's the older party. Okay, it started off as a primarily agricultural party, so its roots are pretty Saturnian. The roots of the Democratic Party are pretty Saturnian, and the roots of the Republican Party are more, although obviously parties shift over time, they're more connected with principles of connected with economic growth or expansion, which is a Jupiterian quality, and also more connected with freedom, which is a Venusian quality, freedom of expression, freedom of enterprise, things like that. So overall, we have this very interesting combination. There will be shakeups, like I said, so Pisces is literally the most swampy sign. So we have three water signs. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody if you're like really a strict Democrat, and you believe that this should be handled a different way. Actually, I think it should be handled a different way myself, but this is this is a sudden change. The change of Rahu going through the sign. Now that may slow down when Rahu moves into Aquarius in in June, July, but I'm thinking reforms in a lot of governments are going to take place between now and June and July. and will continue for the next year and a half. So you'll see essentially countries revamping themselves, realigning themselves. Uh, and if you look at the sign connected with enemies, which is normally one Virgo, K2 is pulling up some unexpected enemies, unexpected criticisms, and Rahu is dissolving some partnerships. So a lot of this makes absolute sense astrologically, but it's essentially just reflecting what's happening in the world. And essentially, we'll start to see because Saturn will be aspecting Jupiter, we'll be starting to see some minor inflation, and we'll also be starting to seeing some deleterious effects of the tariffs. But I don't think the tariff effects will last very long. I don't think they'll be very um, harmful or damaging. Jupiter is going to be in an angle from Pisces in Saturn within uh, a couple of months. Mercury will go direct April 9th. You'll start to see some things that have been blocked move forward. And I think you'll see really, this will be an interesting year. And so I think you'll see a lot of activity on the oceans because of Cancer being here and Pisces over here. This is interesting because this can explain astrologically, it can give a justification for um, why the United States um, is attacking the Houthis, although I'm not crazy about that particular strategy, if I'm quite honest about it. Um, and we also have Mars in an angle from the moon, so that tends to cause problems with relationships as well. So I think this will be an interesting next couple of months. The year overall, if I go with the New Year chart, let me just switch over here. So this will be the Sade Sati, or not the Sade Sati, the Pisces transit chart. Pisces, Saturn, transit, 2025. All right, David. No, we're not going to keep it as a now record. Thank you. And we'll look at it. So this is probably, so this is what I have for the Hindu New Year. And the chart is fairly similar, although again, it's really interesting because you have, so I went over this last week, I believe, but you actually have the Leo as the rising sign. Uh, the sun's in the eighth house. That's not good for governments. That's not really particularly good for stability in governments or government structures. Um, and Venus, Mercury, Rahu, all kinds of sitting together in this sign. And there is an attempt, what I would call a behind the scenes attempt to maintain power. Some of it's not even behind the scenes. You know, if we're talking about places like Romania and Germany and let's say the European Union and um, Myanmar or Burma as it was once known, or China. It's very overt, it's not, they're not hiding the attempts to um, control the situation. The European Union isn't hiding its interest in keeping the war in Ukraine going. Um, and um, and and also, to be fair, Russia has not been as forthcoming as some people thought they would be. But I think, and and also because of the retrogrades, ceasefires in Israel have stopped, things like that. I think you'll start to see some progress towards peace after Mercury goes direct around April 9th. I think you'll see some prospects in trade, trade negotiations starting to move forward and people not digging their heels quite so much. And also some court cases clear after April 9th, but more specifically after April 15th. Um, it's literally impossible for me to think that the executive branch will be held back after April 15th. It's just the sun will be exalted. It'll be moving towards Jupiter. I I don't see how it can be stopped. I could be wrong, but I don't see how it can be stopped except for Saturn. Around May 15th, Saturn aspecting Jupiter, and that delaying things a little bit. But by June, no, that's not going to happen. Um, the other thing is, if we have, um, so there will be cuts, and a lot of the judicial efforts to um, stop or appeal or um, delay these things will be going after a few months. At least that's my read. Um, no, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. Uh, I do think the United States is heavily over bureaucratized, maybe my personal opinion. Um, and uh, it's it needs to be uh, much leaner. But how it's done, whether or not it's done fairly, I think right now what's happening right now is because people don't understand what's going on. They're panicking and they're being encouraged to panic because of this Rahu in conjunction with Venus and Mercury, and that itself alone causes people to panic. I think that so this was, but I think one of the things that interests me is this was also um, has similar planetary combinations in 1968, and the economy came back very strong. And we also had 1968, as a matter of fact, was a boom year. As a matter of fact, it was the start of the inflationary cycle. We had a 1 year recession in 1969 to 1970, and that laid the foundation for increased growth until around 1973, 1974. So I think that, and that was triggered by the oil crisis, by essentially by oil going up so rapidly, the price of oil going up so rapidly. Um, the other thing that's interesting, at least from this chart, is I think the military will be very vulnerable over the next couple of months. Okay. So I think they're going to be in the crosshairs. I think they're going to lose a lot of money. And I think that's only fair as well. So essentially, if you have these conditions happening, you will have well, an economic downturn. You won't necessarily have inflation, but it will hurt some people definitely because people will be thrown out of work. You know, that's just the way it is. So I don't like to see anybody lose their job. I went through the Reagan cuts, the initial Reagan cuts in 1980. I'm sorry, 1981, and they were two-thirds of my co-employees got laid off. So it's not that I'm insensitive to this. It's just that these things do happen, and hopefully they can retool and can readjust quickly. Okay. Um, but yeah, to me it seems inevitable. The cuts are going to occur. How rapidly they occur, that's another question, but it seems inevitable. If we're talking about foreign governments, keep in mind COVID put many foreign governments in debt, in large cycles of debt. So this is not a problem that's unique to the United States. This is a problem which is facing pretty much everyone across the world. And I think that when we have for the chart we're looking at for the Hindu New Year now of Saturn in the seventh house, um, it's going to be a little bit difficult for countries to hold on. Some countries will do well. India, I think, will do well. Um, and so we're going to look at individual countries more definitively next week. So I just wanted to give you an overview. But a lot of countries have been hit with open borders, uh, especially in Europe, and those countries are suffering from that as well. And it's not that, again, it's not that anyone is necessarily opposed to open immigration. It's just that the resources in the country, the assimilation ability of the country, um, come as a shock to the system. It can come as an economic shock and as a social shock to the system. So Sweden has had an increase in crime over the past few years. Um, and so, so Sweden is normally a fairly um, low crime country. So they're adjusting to that. It's Germany's had Germany and Poland have had overwhelming strains, and UK has had over France have all had overwhelming strains put on their uh, financial systems. So it's really interesting to watch this pattern take effect because if U.S. aid is withdrawn, that was one of the things that was allowing these countries to actually provide um, low cost or no cost healthcare to their populations. One of the things, not the only thing. I have to be clear about that. That will make it more difficult for those countries to maintain that level of service. So it'll be interesting to observe what happens. Let's go to this week and see what's happening for your individual signs. Okay, so let's go to a now chart. All right, so right now I have Mars in the first house. So So essentially, this is when I'm doing the actual broadcast. This is when I started the broadcast. I have Mars in the first house. And I focused a lot on debt, right? I focused a lot on expenditures and I focused a lot on change. Moon is in Ashvini Nakshatra, which is considered to be a healing nakshatra. It makes the Ashvin Kumars were um, elevated to the status of gods by a rishi who wanted to um, rejuvenate himself. So, because he had a young bride and he wanted to be able to enjoy his young bride. Um, and so essentially, a lot of this activity, although it may seem very disruptive right now, will actually energize um, people, and it will actually have a good result for people. I would say a good result for people. Um, Jupiter in the 12th house would focus a lot on foreign. I focus a lot on foreign countries, and I do see inflation mitigating around um, June, July, not right away, but June, July. Um, And let's, Mars is aspecting K2, so everybody's following. They're blowing up Teslas, or they're firebombing, or they're marking up Teslas. Uh, there was also a picture I saw of one older woman knocking a MAGA hat off a younger woman on an escalator, which was just um, I thought interesting, and so I. I know how I feel about that. Essentially, if we were the other way around, uh, there there'd be a lot of discussions about the breakdown of civility in society because caused by the right. So I don't know. This is just we're we're in these very narrow uh, binds of judgment, confinements of judgment right now. That's the Mars in the first house right now. K2 in the fourth house, along with the Sri Lagna. So people are not pessimistic, but a little bit afraid of the unknown with K2 along with the Sri Lagna. And the Aruda Lagna has us focused on other people. We're focused on other individuals. The Lagna should be Mercury is in the 10th house, along with Sun, Venus, Rahu, Saturn. So again, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstanding. The gaffe which let the reporter into the closed meeting was almost like a stereotypical Mercury retrograde phenomenon. And it's it shouldn't have happened, definitely. Uh, but I I think it concerns me, but not as much as the fact that we're actually uh, bombing another country. That concerns me more, to be honest. Um, and so 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 essentially something got out. I think that will this blow over? Yeah, with Saturn in conjunction with Mercury and Rahu in conjunction with Mercury, it'll probably be institutionalized. So no matter how careful they are in the future, that will linger. And let's see now. One, two, three, four. But again, that's not the important thing. The important thing right now is really the economy and how it can pick up. And I think that's going to be the big issue over the next 3 months or so. How it can pick up, how we can lower prices, things like that. So that seems to be the biggest vulnerability the current administration. And so they'll have to flip on that pretty quickly in order to retain their support level. Um, so I'm thinking they will. I think they will by June or July. The other thing is, so let's look at your individual charts. And again, the economy is a problem throughout the world. If UK's standard of living is lower than Mississippi, that presents a problem for a major European country. So it's you know, so everybody's hurting. It's not just the United States. All right. So let's go over here. We have so for Aries, there's a lot of focus on home life. Let's go to the individual charts. For Aries, there's a lot of focus on home life, and I promise I'll be better organized next week. For Aries, there's a focus on home life and also on increasing financial resources and on going for uh, the gold right now, going for what you believe in. Um, K2 with a Sri Lagna, which is a special rising, which is a special sign, indicates money is going out the door for necessary expenses. Seventh house Lord is in the 12th house, so relationship partners are spending money. Um, and this sign is going to be tempted to hide, uh, and also a spouse will be tempted to hide expenses. Um, but I think the good thing is you have Venus in the 12th house. At least the sign will be able to sell it to save some money. But Saturn entering the 12th house, again, it does indicate heavy expenditure patterns for Aries, if I'm quite honest. So work will be challenging, a little frustrating, a little confused. For Taurus, Jupiter's in the first house. This is actually a good placement. Jupiter rules the 11th and the 8th house, so unexpected gains of income. And but the sign will be very aggressive. This is May 15th to June 15th. And children will be a little bit difficult to handle or a little bit unpredictable. Relationship life will cause a lot of fights or arguments, especially about finances. And the debilitated placement of Mercury in the 11th house, even though it's canceled somewhat by Venus and the mutual exchange of Venus and Jupiter, um, does indicate some financial distress for this sign. But again, that'll pass within a few days. The other thing is, for this particular sign, Moon is slightly benefic, so there's some ability to gain money and save it for Taurus rising. For Gemini, this is June 15th to July 15th, or Gemini Moon or Gemini rising, whichever fits your particular chart. Um, we have Mars in the first house, and there's a lot of focus. So Gemini rising right now, there's a lot of focus on communications. Um, I would say dishonesty in politics, if I'm very truthful, or arguments in politics, if I'm very truthful. A lot of it's coming from both sides, but there's more coming from at least from this combination from the Democrat side. So there's worry about how it will affect people's lives domestically, because Venus tends to be a domestic planet. And But uh, again, what neither side is totally blame free. Mars is the Lord of the 11th house in the first house, so it does indicate some gains. Some financial boost for this sign because Jupiter in the 12th does indicate the ability to pay off debts. The Moon is placed in what's called a wealth-producing combination, so it's in the 11th house as Lord of the second house. And K2 does indicate some fights or arguments with relationship partners or over home life, and some and children are a little bit greedy right now. That's going to continue for another couple of months. Mercury, it does give some communication problems, especially on the job. But overall, this isn't a bad chart for Gemini rising. The Mars in the first house is difficult because they'll feel like they're battling everywhere. They'll feel like they're in arguments everywhere, and relationship life will also not be very smooth. For Cancer, Cancer has Moon is in the 10th house, so Cancer will be focused on career. However, bosses will be, or supervisors will be a little bit um, difficult to deal with. Jupiter in this particular sign uh, gives good financial gains, but Mars in the 12th house, again, we have disputes with relationship partners, and maybe the sign will find itself victimized a little bit by relationship partners. Um, but overall, luck looks fairly good for this sign, but a lot of hard work and a lot of restrictions on financial growth. Um, K2's in the third house, so the sign will have a lot of courage. It will associate with creative people, and your Papado line is in the seventh house, so there may be some relationship issues for this particular sign this week in particular. Excuse me. As a matter of fact, that'll continue for the next couple of months. Yeah, actually, for the next 3 months for Cancer, unfortunately, the next 3 to 4 months. For Leo, Leo has K2 in the second house. So again, there is some problem in communications. There is not a lot of finesse if K2's in the second house. Uh, People will feel like the sign is stealing authority or stealing or being dishonest. Uh, but actually, K2, from what I've seen of K2, K2 is sort of a shortcut sign, a shortcut planet. So it doesn't feel it has to explain itself very much. So that's why you're seeing these cuts happen very quickly. This is from the ruler. This is the Leo is the ruling planet of the ruling sign of the zodiac. So rulers are making decisions which are being done without consultation. Um, this is not only true of Trump, but also people like Sturmer and Putin and Zelensky. Uh, and uh, the prime minister, the premier of China, it's not unique to the United States. Nobody's really consulting. As a matter of fact, I've seen some broadcasts from the European Union, and they seem a bit disconnected from reality. So that K2 in this sign, I'll be relieved when it goes into Leo because at least some of the leaders will shut up a little bit. Um, K2 and let me just see, put it in plain English. Leo will have to be more selfless. Let's put it that way. So K2's in Virgo right now. We have planets in the eighth house. That does mean there's some kind of opposition behind the scenes forming around leadership that will break up within about 2 weeks. And let's see now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Jupiter's in the 10th house. There's a lot of focus on career. So essentially, this is still a lucky period for the sign in terms of career. Not much uh, that Leos can't do during this period. Financial gains, increased luck over the next few days. But again, like I said, conspiracies against this particular sign are pretty common during this transit. And they'll continue really through, I would say, through around late April. For Virgo, Virgo has K2 in the first house along with the Sri Lagna, and this indicates there's some concern about financial progress for the sign. Um, Maybe a lack of mindfulness as to financial limitations. Um, Venus is in the second house and it's in the sixth house. So it's exalted. So it does indicate some potential good for money, but there is a reality factor coming in because Saturn just entered this sign, right? So it's going to be in conjunction with Venus pretty soon. And let's see now. The so that'll essentially tamp down on any luxuries or any artistic efforts. Um, Third house, Lord Mars is in the 10th house, so career life will become a main source of focus or desire or ambition. Jupiter's in the ninth, so actually it looks like a pretty lucky month for this sign. Moon is in the eighth house, so there is some anxiety about money, about not being able to access money, and relationships are really confused during this particular period. That's really the shorthand way to describe them. They essentially indicate some problems with the relationship life. Um, so and relationship partners not really knowing what they want if you're in a relationship. For Libra, Libra has Moon in the seventh house. It can indicate a change in relationship status, but more focus on career and a relationship partner getting more involved in career life. Jupiter's in the eighth. That's actually considered to be a good combination for this rising sign because it takes um, enemies and blocks them away. Let's see now. Mars is in the ninth house, good for financial gains for this sign, because you have the second lord in the ninth house, and you have, but you have a lot of effort, a lot of work. Everything seems like it's a lot of labor for this sign, at least this particular week and this particular month. So that will improve quite a bit within about 2 weeks or so when Sun enters this sign. And let's see now. So Libra ha actually has not a bad chart right now, but the Saturn, Rahu, Venus, Mercury, nothing seems easy. Everything seems it's easier to spend with K2 in the 12th house than it is to save. And there's a certain carelessness that goes along with that. For Scorpio, Scorpio has its own company. The first lord is in the eighth house. That'll change within a couple of days, within about a week. Jupiter's in the seventh house, gives better relationship life for this chart. Relationship partner will seem a little harsh or a little bit difficult to deal with, but basically they'll be helpful. Moon is in the sixth house. That indicates the career life will tend to be, no, I'm sorry, not career life. Um, Luck will tend to be obtained through hard work. We have a lot of planets in the fifth house. That indicates a lot of benefits coming forward for the sign, especially over the next couple of weeks. Again, you'll have to work for them because Saturn doesn't give anything away for free. and it'll be less than you want, but you'll still get the benefits. For Sagittarius, we have this cluster of planets in the fourth house, so this indicates um, a certain domestic disruption, um, problems with at home, problems with leaders. Moon is in the fifth house. That's actually good for some unexpected financial gains. Jupiter's in the sixth house, so kind of a difficult week for Sag rising or for Sag moon or Sag sun. And Mars is in the seventh house, so again, arguments with relationship partners. Um, this particular placement of Mars in Gemini is not good for relationships just in general. So you'll see a lot of people fighting and a lot of friends fighting, as a matter of fact, friends and brothers and relationship partners, because Gemini actually stands for all those things. Capricorn. Capricorn has Saturn in the third house, uh, along with Mercury and Venus and Sun. So this is kind of uh, a fortunate Raj Yoga for this particular rising sign. Um, it does indicate, so Saturn indicates it will produce some wealth through hard work. Moon is in the fourth house. Um, Relationship life should be good, should be fine. Fifth house, Jupiter's in the fifth house. Good for financial gains overall. The Jupiter-Venus exchange is really good for this particular sign. And Mars is in the sixth, so enemies will be there, but they'll be relatively easily or quickly conquered. K2 is in the ninth house, unexpected financial gains, especially after April 9th. For Aquarius, Aquarius has no planets in it, but Saturn, the Lord of Aquarius, is in the second house. So there's a lot of focus on financial resources, also on relationship partners, and also on fame, beauty, and hard work for Aquarius. So the moon in the third house is not bad because, again, it's a Dustana Lord in a Dustana house. So that kind of mitigates or makes pressure from um, rivals less intense. Jupiter's in the fourth house, good for education. Mars is in the fifth house. Sudden changes in income or earnings and arguments with children. And K2 is in the eighth house. Again, relationship partners will be a little bit prone to illness or a little bit prone to changing their minds quickly. Let's finally go to Pisces. Pisces has Sun, Rahu, Saturn, Mercury, and Venus in it, so it's a jam-packed sign. And this usually indicates a lot of activity, some earthquakes. There was an earthquake in Myanmar just recently. Uh, I think it was a 7.7 earthquake. And so, so I always use Pisces as well as the earth signs for earthquakes or natural disasters. And Rahu over here will give a lot of panic or a lot of worry about those things. Um, One other thing is Turkey. I just want to mention this. Turkey is a Gemini rising, and their government uh, actually has had the mayor of the largest city in Turkey was arrested. He was considered to be a favorite for the presidential election, and he was in fact arrested. So again, this is sort of like in keeping um, with the attempts to um, mute political discourse. But I'm digressing a bit too much. I apologize. Moon is in the second house. Good focus on money, financial growth. For Pisces, Jupiter's in the third house. A lot of focus on gain, and Mars is in the fourth house. So again, indicates some squabbles or arguments with the relationship partners overall. K2 is in the seventh house, so communication has not been good with relationship partners anyway for this particular sign. Now you'll notice all the planets are clustered over in this side of the zodiac. So what does that mean in plain English? Well, there's a lot of activity around Pisces, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. So this is around losses, control, money, short-term relationships. So those are the things that are being most strongly affected by these particular transits. Um, as time rolls on and Sun moves out of the sign and Mercury, then Venus move out of the sign, then Rahu in July, you'll see less tension in those parts of life. But that's what we can expect over the next few months. Let's go on to the time and space change. That's just in general. And we're gonna and shut it down, then blow it up again. And that's what I want to see. Okay, so where are the problems? Hawaii has a lot of issues, a lot of problems. That's interesting. So Hawaii still hasn't gotten out of its land issues, out of its governance issues, and it's being affected economically pretty hard. Alaska looks the same way. We have a Mars line running down through Vancouver, or through British Columbia, excuse me, and it'll affect California, Oregon, and Washington State as well. So whether or not that means earthquakes or disruptions in government, I'm not sure. I'm more inclined to think disruptions in communications or arguments over politics than earthquakes, but both are possible. We have a large Jupiter line running through North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, close to Oklahoma, and down through Louisiana and touching Mexico, close to Cuba, and down by Panama, and all the way down to Ecuador and Peru, and all the way through Argentina. So none of these areas is going to have any major disruptions. I mean, I think there can be some economic disruptions because of the Saturn aspect on Jupiter right now, but they're not really close to each other planetarily. There'll probably be some important court cases that come out of this part of the country. Um, and but the area that I'm really interested in right now is this Rahu, Saturn, Venus, Mercury line spreading all the way down through close to Canada. So we know that Canada has been upset with the United States over tariffs, but also they've been upset with their own government. And I don't know if this means that the conservative candidate will win, um, or or whether uh, the Labor candidate will win. I'm inclined to think the conservative candidate will win because um, most of um, most of the policies that caused the most disruption in Canada were liberal policies, but again, it's one of those things with Rahu being there, it's too close to call, at least from my perspective. But that's what I'm leaning towards. And down here, Guyana, Venezuela, Brazil, Bolivia, down through Argentina, a lot of disruption in government, a lot of protests. I think in Argentina, this is going right through Buenos Aires, or close to Buenos Aires. I'm sorry. It's a Jupiter line going right by Buenos Aires. Um, The Mars line is touching on Brazil a little bit, not quite there, and there's a moon line. So this doesn't necessarily mean a change in government, but there will be a change in policies. And right now, Brazil is trying to keep everything under control. But I don't think it'll succeed over the next couple of months. There are no lines running through UK or France or Spain or Algeria for that matter. But there are lines running through Libya, through Sweden. There's a Jupiter line running through Sweden, through Germany, through Italy, and down into Central African Republic and all the way down into sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm thinking this part of the country will have reforms, or these countries will have reforms. These countries will have rebellions or fights, maybe even minor conflicts break out uh, in Greece, Eastern Europe, maybe even Norway and Finland, Denmark, oddly enough. And also, this is tapping close to the Ukraine. There's a Saturn line going through the Ukraine, and that to me would indicate dissatisfaction with the current government, but just them sticking in. There's a Mars line running through Iran and down close to Yemen and down close to United Arab Emirates. And this indicates some more fighting, some more antagonism in Russia. There's a moon line running up through Iran, so this could indicate a change of government, although that's pretty extreme and close to Afghanistan as well. Um, India has no lines running through it right now, which is fortunate. India will be at least be left alone for a little bit. Um, and there's a Jupiter line running through Vietnam, China, but also all this Rahu, Saturn, Mars line. So Vietnam looks like it's going to do comparatively well. Malaysia, Indonesia, but there's also a lot of disruption in Indonesia and China. Looks like economic disruption in Western Australia as well, and even some political scandals happening in this particular part of the world. Um, Sun is going through Philippines. Again, there's a struggle for that government to stay in power. Same is true of North and South Korea, but South Korea is more unstable right now. And there's also a moon line running through Japan and through Papua. And a Mars line running through Papua New Guinea or close to Papua New Guinea. So there could be some conflicts there. And there's a moon line running through Australia. So that does indicate some change in local governments. So I think you will see some political shocks over the next couple of weeks. That won't be that wouldn't surprise me at all. Um, but I'm also thinking, and again, we saw the pullback of the UN nominee to maintain a seat. So obviously, the Republicans are worried about maintaining seats or maintaining their majority. So again, a lot of these things are in ebb and flow right now, and a lot of it will be clearer after April 15th. You know, that much I can tell you. Until then, we're sort of like after the Saturn Rahu conjunction, where I would say the insanity will peak, and the sun moving into Aries, where it will actually Sun's exalted in Aries, so you'll see more forceful action by the executive branch, but not a fascist government. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This is true throughout the world. Okay, so that's it for me for this week. I love you all. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And God bless you and take care. Remember, all these things represent opportunities for you, not necessarily bad signs. Okay? Not necessarily bad times. Okay? All right. So keep your cool over the next few months and everything will work out fine. Okay? All right. Lovely to see you folks. I'll be back next week, a bit better organized and with uh, a more focused view of what will happen in the world. Okay? All right. See you soon. Bye bye, everyone. I hope you watched until the end. Thank you.